So thank you for joining us for the GOT Outcomes Orientation webinar. Today, I'm going to go ahead and discuss the application requirements, the application process, and I do have our last year's winners who will be able to answer some of your questions and speak to their own experiences with the process. So I'd like to introduce you to the 2019 GOT Outcomes winners. First, from Noble SWAT Drug-Free Communities, they were the winners for Coalition and Focus. I have Charlene Schroeder. She is the Director of Oklahoma's Regional Prevention Coordinator for Region 8, housed in University of Oklahoma Southwest Prevention Center. The entirety of her career is comprised of substance abuse prevention and community corrections, working with staff, students, professionals, and coalitions to build healthier communities. Also from Noble SWAT is Colton Sneed, who is the DFC coordinator. He has over 3 years of professional experience in nonprofit and prevention work, including 2 years in mental health case management. As the coordinator, he works to prevent substance abuse among kindergarten through high school age students in Cleveland County. And so for Coalition of Excellence, we have Drug-Free Fayette, and with us today is Michael Mumber, who is the program coordinator. He is a substance abuse certified preventionist who has been making a difference in his community through his work with Fayette Factor and AV Pride. In addition, he is the vice chair of Let's Be Clear Georgia, a statewide marijuana prevention organization. And last, for Coalition of the Year, we have Riverhead Community Coalition for Safe and Drug-Free Youth. And joining us is Felicia Skokoza. She has a master's degree in social work and is the executive director of Riverhead Community Awareness Program, Inc. Since 1999, a nonprofit organization consisting of 8 full-time employees whose focus is youth substance abuse prevention. So you'll be hearing a little bit more from them a little bit later in this presentation. So just a brief little history about the GOT Outcomes Awards. It's been here since 2004, and it's been used to recognize exceptional community coalitions that effectively contribute to alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use and misuse prevention. Our very first winners were Boyd and Green Up Champions for a Drug-Free Kentucky and Youth Leadership Institute's Marin County Prevention Youth Council. So it's been a long time since we've been doing this award program, and over the years, we've been trying to make more improvements to make the system a little bit easier, a little bit more friendly, but also still very beneficial to the work that you guys are doing in your community. And so this program really continues to align the 2 parts of the National Coalition Institute here at CADCA. So that first part was the training, coalition development, and outreach. And this is the area that really does the trainings that we provide, such as the National Coalition Academy. They also do coalition development support. If you ever need their help, you can always ask them, and they'll be willing to offer their services. And any other trainings that you guys might need for your community, you can always ask for that help. They go through things such as the Strategic Prevention Framework and CADCA's 7 strategies, and any types of products that you might need to move your work forward in your coalition. And so tying into that, the other part is evaluation and research. So while you take all what you've learned from the trainings and the academies and whatnot and apply them to your community, you'll also be able to now see what those outcomes are from all of your hard work and see the progress that you've made within your community. And like I said, we want to recognize coalitions for that work. And so if you saw there is a poll, if you guys want to go ahead and do that, the question is, has your coalition submitted a GOT Outcomes application in a previous year? So if you have time for that, I'm going to go into the next slide. So the application process, there are 2 phases. So for phase 1, the main part of it are the coalition products that are taught in the National Coalition Academy. So there are 6 of them total. First is the community assessment. And this kind of goes into your community description and history, needs, resources, and goals, things like that. Then you have the logic model, which should be your coalition roadmap. This usually consists of 1 main focus problem, 2 root causes, and 4 local conditions with data to support each of those. Next is the strategic and action plan. So these are your objectives and strategies to tie into your logic model and what's your plan to implement those. Then there's the evaluation plan, and you take those data points that are on your logic model and you use that as a guide to see what kind of progress and outcomes you've achieved over time. And tying it all together is the evaluation communication plan. So once you do have all that data to support the outcomes that you've achieved, who is important to know that information? What type of information would best suit their needs, and how might you tell them that so that it can make an impact in your community and potentially lead to sustainability in the sustainability plan. So the long term, how will those outcomes be maintained in the long run? So in addition to those coalition products, you'll have a 1-page description of your coalition outcomes, as well as the application form. Now, there are templates for all of these on the Got Outcomes website. So make sure you take a look at those if you just want to get an idea of what we're looking at. You do not have to completely go by the template, but if it helps to act as a guide, definitely please use them. In addition to that, the scoring rubric is there as well. So you can keep an eye out for what we're looking for really in the application process and grading process. Let's see if there's any questions. Okay. So going into phase 2, phase 1 was more kind of formalizing your products and getting it all into a nice little package. And now phase 2 for the top 25% of coalitions moving on, you want to kind of pull it all into one story that you can present to your coalition, to your community, and to stakeholders, something that's easy, bite-sized for them to understand. So the first part of phase 2 is telling the coalition story PowerPoint presentation, and then also a 1-page infographic about the coalition and its community level outcomes. So going into the award categories, there are 3 of them. First is coalition and focus, where it'd be focusing on short-term outcomes, so 6 to 24 months. Next is coalition of excellence, so short-term and intermediate outcomes. You want to make sure you're showing both of those in the application. And then finally, coalition of the year, short-term, intermediate, and long-term outcomes. All right. So for the application steps, you really want to only select one youth substance use issue. I think that'll be able to help you tailor your application and really focus on one thing. I know sometimes it can get a bit scattered, and we just really want to see how that one substance has been addressed in your community and how you'd like to highlight that. And then step 2, you want to really identify which award category or which type of outcomes which community level outcomes you want to highlight as well. So is it the short-term and intermediate, short-term, intermediate, and long-term? So that will really be based off of what types of outcomes you guys have achieved for that substance, and will determine which award category you're applying for. And then the last step is to go through and submit the products that I had shown you before. So the coalition products, the 1-page description, and the Got Outcomes application form. So as I mentioned, the templates and the scoring rubric can be found on the CADCA Got Outcomes website. All right, so why should you participate? Well, first, for all applicants, we do provide in-depth feedback for all of your coalition's products. After we turn them in, we grade them, we make sure that we have a good collection of our thoughts and why we graded it and such, and then how you can make improvements. And even before you submit your application, we have free coalition development support to be able to enhance your product. So if you have any questions, you can go to training@cadca.org and to email them and ask them any questions about the specific products. They might be able to help you get through some of them, answer any questions, make improvements, things like that. And they'll be available all the way leading up to the application deadline. So definitely take advantage of this free support for your products. In addition to that, there is the opportunity to participate in the Ideas Fair poster presentation at CADCA's 2021 National Leadership Forum. Now, for the winners of the God Outcomes Awards, first, you'll get recognized in CADCA's communications, such as our weekly newsletter, our annual newsletter, and of course, the God Outcomes website. The big one here is the free lodging, travel, and registration for one member to attend the 2021 National Leadership Forum. In addition to that, your coalition will get to present at the CADCA God Outcomes workshop at the Leadership Forum. And on the very last day of forum, you'll receive a custom award with your coalition's name and successes engraved on the front. There's also the possibility to participate in the Graduate Coalition Academy. So it's quite a big list of things that can be there for just to apply for improvement for yourself, but also as a winner to be able to go to Leadership Forum and spread your coalition's work with others. Okay, so I breezed through that pretty quickly. That's a good overview of the application process. If you do need more specific details, it's also on our website. So today I do want to focus a little bit on our panelists. So how has the application process influenced your coalition's work? I'll go ahead and toss that to Michael first, and then we'll move from there.
Well, you know, when we went through National Coalition Academy, we really learned a new science of substance abuse prevention, and it was pretty abstract at that point. And it took us 3 more years before we first applied for the God Outcomes Award, and it gave us a chance to re-immerse ourselves in the science now with 3 years behind us of coalition work. And it gave us a chance to include our coalition members in a more fundamental way. So even if we had not won, just the process of getting our coalition members reintegrated or integrated into that thinking process has been transformative for our coalition, because now our coalition members are asking questions off the logic model, which never would have happened a couple of years ago. So that would be a short answer from me.
Great. Felicia?
Hello. So this was our 3rd year applying for the God Outcomes. And this year we did have long-term outcomes to show. So this also, well, last year, the application process changed last year, and I really like the new application process, that it's more in line with all the CADCA products. So we had been in the Coalition Academy, we finished in 2014, so this gave us an opportunity to update all our products and really take a look at the basic foundation of our coalition's mission and process. And it really helped us to see what positive outcomes happen, and maybe some of the things that we kind of let fall by the wayside that was in our initial action plan. So it really helped us reevaluate where we were at as far as our goals.
Perfect. Thank you, Felicia. Colton or Charlene?
Well, I was going to say, I think what it did for us is it helped us fine tune our products. And in fine tuning those products, it really helped us both as staff for coalition, but the coalition as well, to really be more accountable for our work. It ensured that we were making data-driven decisions following the strategic prevention framework. So in essence, it really helped us become more proficient at doing community change because we were following a very specific plan and really holding ourselves accountable on that plan as well.
I think it also helped with sustainability planning as well, to see that where we got our outcomes is something that we need to find funding to keep doing the plans and the implementation and the policies and stuff that we were doing to get those. We don't want to just stop those and then that those numbers go back up or whatever. So we really can gives you a good look at what you can put towards sustainability or where you need to focus your sustainability as well.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. We will go on to the second question. What difficulties did you face during the application process? I'll go ahead and toss that to Felicia this time.
Thanks. I have to be honest, the application process is not easy. It's very challenging. It's just a lot of parts, but you feel really good when you finish it. The most challenging, I think, was in the phase 2 in the PowerPoint, to keep it limited to the page limit. You have so much that you want to say, and you really have to just focus on the kind of the big stuff and tell your story. And it's always harder to write less than to write more. So that, I think, is the biggest challenge, and not to make it too wordy, but you're trying to get your story across at the same time. I think that was the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I can understand trying to find the balance between that. So, Charlene?
I was going to say, I think, and this is probably as a field as well, is that we're really great at doing the work, but we're really sometimes challenged with celebrating our success. So sometimes really talking about the good things that we've done and kind of giving yourself a pat on the back is sometimes challenging. It's a whole lot easier to tell you all of the things that we've done, but then to be able to, celebrate that we've really accomplished some things and made some changes in our communities, sometimes a little challenging.
Colton?
Well, I guess a challenge or difficulty for us in Oklahoma was some of our data. You think you've got a lot of data and good data, and then you go through a process like this and you kind of see the holes in some of that, or the lack of data. We had some difficulties with our OP&A with a teacher walkout, and it's every 2-year Oklahoma Prevention Needs Assessment Survey in the schools. So finding, when you're looking at that, and then you got to get creative in how you find your data and how you're collecting that, how you're presenting that and stuff. So that was one of the difficulties for us, was just we saw where we were lacking in certain areas with data and where we needed to improve in that.
Great, thank you so much. And Michael?
One of the most challenging parts of the science of prevention for me is the darn logic model. It's such a thoughtful document, but it's so complicated. Look at this thing. I know you all know what it looks like, but it's quite intimidating even for the people who are staff. And but this process, we took advantage of all the coalition development support that CADCA offers. And we really did some practice exercises over and over again with our coalition members. And, what comes out after that is that we got our own little working model. We leave the data off of it and add pretty colors and stuff. I don't know if you can see that, but it's just a lot prettier than the other one, right? And less intimidating. And, the document I just showed you, it's got scribbles on it. I met with the leader of our alcohol team yesterday, and we had this in front of us, and we were scribbling notes, and we talked about, are we missing a root cause here? And just really substantial. So the hardest part about this process was the logic model, but by really immersing ourselves in it, again, whether we won the award or not, it took us to a new level of having really meaningful, fundamental conversations with our coalition members.
Great, and yeah, that's what we want. You want to be able to work with your coalitions, develop those products, to develop your work, and keep growing. So that's a great point. Last question. What's one piece of advice you would give to potential applicants? Colton, you want to take that one?
Sure. I guess my biggest piece would be, don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to apply, even if you are not sure of your data or you're not sure of your products, because even at the very basis of just applying, there's a lot of benefits out of that. And don't be afraid of the, I guess it's not critiques, but the support that shows, if you have a hole in it, or if your data is a little missing, or you need more data or things like, because that's good, not just for the application and that stuff, but it's good for your coalition. It's good for your work. It's good for your sustainability. But because the reality is that we're not, Michael isn't the exception. We're pretty ordinary people. He's pretty extraordinary, but we're pretty normal people, right? Just doing the work. We're not some, we didn't do some special thing. We just did the work, and then finding out how to communicate that and how to present that. And then you maybe get recognized, you maybe not, but at the end of the day, you get a lot of self-reflection for your coalition. You get a lot of direction. And then, like I've mentioned a couple times, that sustainability of seeing where you can continue and what's working and what's not. And I think that's a huge thing. So don't be afraid to apply, even if you don't think that you have a shot. You still get a lot of good out of it.
Charlene, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure that you really look at where you are in the level of your work, and then strategically apply for the level of the award. So if you're new and you really haven't had a long-term working on it, then certainly apply for the Coalition of Focus. And then the longer you've been in the work, apply for maybe one of the higher levels that could be progressive, that you really just strategically look at where you are in your work. And like Colton said, the benefits are more than just applying and winning. You really get some great feedback, and you really get great support, which really kind of makes you a winner before you even win an award.
Thank you. Felicia?
Two things really. When you think about outcomes, a lot of times we think about really dramatic outcomes, and we have not eliminated underage drinking in our community, and our numbers are still high, but we were able to show a trend in decline. So you want to look at that. You don't want to have to think about all or nothing. You want to look at your trends and your improvements that you're making and celebrate those outcomes. And the second piece is you also want to highlight your coalition process, how you collaborate with your sectors, how you engage different members of the community, the cooperation, because I found that I know it's called Got Outcomes, but in the past we were so focused on our outcomes, and this past one, we focused a lot on our process and how we collaborated. And I really feel like that made our application stand out.
Great, thank you. Michael?
Well, I leverage what was said before me. You win just by applying, because the process is really the win itself. And I would urge us to not just do it as staff members, but really get support from CADCA's Coalition Development Team as much as you can, and leverage your coalition members, involve them, because now, when we applied, one of the things we acknowledged, we had some outcomes in alcohol, but we have some things we've fallen short in. parents and students, parents and kids are not talking to each other. That came out in our data. We revealed that as part of our application process. But because we involved our coalition members in that process, afterwards, one of our coalition members said, well, why aren't we focusing on increasing the quality of conversation between parents and teens? Because we didn't have any strategies addressed at that. And so now we do. And isn't that a big win that our coalition members are saying, our data is telling us this, let's do that. For some reason, I wasn't doing that on my own.
All right, thanks, Michael. We did get one question from the Q&A box. Approximately how many hours of staff time did you use to complete the application? Or how many hours worth of extra coalition meetings did you do? I'll go ahead and leave that open to any of the panelists to speak to that.
I'll go. I don't know that we kept track of just a specific set of hours on there, but I would say it did take between refining your products and that stuff. Luckily, we had been through the Coalition Academy fairly recent. We graduated, I think, in 17 from the or I think we completed it in 2017, graduated in February of 2018 from the National Coalition Academy. So we were fairly recent with our products, but we were still able to refine those and get those better. So that took up some time, creating the PowerPoint, getting coalition members to give you pictures and input, and trying to get people for kind of interview or give you some quotes, and that stuff took a lot of time. And then creating the one-page infograph took some time, but it was also a good time. It wasn't just a stressful, it would get kind of stressful at times, but it was a good reflection and of that, and also challenging to find someone to help in those and reach out to other people. We didn't do a whole lot of extra coalition meetings. We just during our already set coalition meetings, we would discuss those things and we utilized some GroupMe things with the kids to show them, hey, here's what we're doing, what do you think of this? Or we'd take it to the coalition meeting and use just a little bit of time there to say, hey, here's what we've started, here's what we're working on, or here's where we're at in this process. And then we would do that as well if we made it to the next phase. Like, that's a good thing. Like, that's a cool thing, and it's good to share that with your coalition, and good to discuss the feedback you get from the coalition development support to say, hey, this is what they've noticed, and this is what we think. So how does that merge together? How do we take that information and go forward? So probably not the best answer there, but it does take a little bit of time. It is kind of time consuming, but it's worth every bit of time that you put into it, I would say.
Anyone else want to pitch in for that one, or
Well,
can we move on?
I agree. It is time consuming, but the way the new process is, you do end up with products that you can actually use in your work, a presentation that you can use in your work in the community, to engage members, to get more people from the community to support you and join. And again, the infographic is great. Everything that you submit, you can use for other things. So it's kind of a forced, it forces you to create products, but you can use them and you can also win. So that's a great benefit as well.
Great, I'm gonna move on to another question. How did you guys decide which category to focus on? And did you have any outside expert evaluation help outside of CADCA? Maybe a paid evaluator or a consultant?
I think I can answer that one. We decided the category because we were coalition of focus, so that was the first level. We had been doing our work approximately 3 years, so we were relatively new in our coalition efforts and really thought that was the most strategic place for us to make our application. And we did not use outside expert help other than what was offered us through CADCA. So the work was done by our staff as well as our coalition. It wasn't by a paid evaluator or a consultant of any type. It was our own staff and our own coalition work.
So we had our evaluator just review everything for us because we actually reached out. We had already won for short-term and intermediate, so we knew we were going to try for long-term. And we reached out to the long-term winner of the year before, and she gave us some advice about having the evaluator on the TA call and just having the evaluator review everything. So we took that advice and it really worked for us well.
Okay, great. I will ask another question from the Q&A box. With the focus on one substance, did your work and outcomes application focus more on programming, or did you guys do more coalition building activities of information dissemination and policy? I do think it's a little bit of both, but I'll let you guys speak to that.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'm assuming this goes into maybe the strategic and action plan, focusing on the actual strategies that are used and what you've used in the application. Some of the, I guess, the activities that you might have done to spread information, or steps you've taken to develop new policies. Or did you do a little bit of both, that kind of thing?
Well, for us, we tried to focus on the environmental strategies that we use to create change. There's always providing information, support, and skills, but we really wanted to focus on the environmental strategies that we collaborated on with our partners.
Maybe one way to answer it for us, and thank you, Felicia, that was a smart answer, is that we were in the intermediate entry. And if you know, short-term tries to influence local conditions, and intermediate tries to influence the root causes, and long-term tries to influence the problem statement of the logic model. So we focused on the root causes, and in the alcohol, on our logic model, it has to do with parent attitudes, for example. So that's one of our root causes. And we have a survey question in our own community survey that says, you know, how familiar are you with social hosting ordinances that exist in our community? And that's our key metric that we use to drive. And that was part of our application. So I think focusing, if you're short term, focus on the activities and the metrics that drive local conditions. And if you're in the intermediate level where we chose to enter, focus on a little bit longer term, a little bit more environmental stuff that impact root causes and so forth. So I hope that touches on the question.
I'd also say that I from what, or at least my kind of understanding of the question too, maybe is going towards what the data that we're using. I don't think that it's limited to just the 4 core measures and that's where your outcomes come from. It's kind of, you know what I mean? It's what data you're using, which those 4 core measures are great data points to have, and certainly required for our progress reports and things like that. But I don't think it's limited to just outcomes in those 4 categories, right? We used, ours was short-term, and we did a reduction in alcohol compliance checks. So alcohol outlets selling to, or retail alcohol outlets selling to minors. And we saw a 30%, around a 30% reduction in those retailers in our county selling to minors. So 30-day use and those things could be in there, but we went a little more specific than just limiting to those kind of broad, which if you had those, obviously if you have positive outcomes in those 4 categories, that'd be great to highlight. But for us, we went a little more specific to alcohol compliance check data and things like that. So that supported that. So yeah.
Thank you. I have one more question that I think might be kind of useful for attendees. Will COVID-19 affect the application process in your opinion? How can that be overcome, and what can we look forward to with the future of our work? Whoever would like to take that may speak.
Well, here in New York, just for an example, we were supposed to do our core measure survey, our PNA survey in this spring, 2020, and we weren't able to do it. So now we've lost that whole cohort that we've been doing every 2 years. So yes, it's going to affect our data. And the other piece of it is we have not been able to implement many of the environmental strategies that we had planned on since March, and probably here in New York, almost I think till the end of the year, the way I see it. I don't really see compliance checks happening anytime soon if the police are so busy with this COVID issue. So I would recommend that you, if that happened to you, that you focus on your previous year maybe and your previous activities, which when we went in 2019, we used our data from 2018. So I think you have to focus on your strengths and the data that you have.
I think that's kind of the same for us. We're a very people-centered process and a people-centered amount of work that we do, and certainly not being able to connect with people or connect in the community is going to have an impact on what we do as well. So I know some of those things won't be happening the way that we had kind of envisioned them in the past. So hopefully we don't lose momentum. We've attempted to keep people engaged throughout the time that we've been kind of away since March. So hopefully that we'll be able to kind of eventually come back on board as soon as things begin to open up in our communities.
All right. I will just do one more question, I think, and then we'll move on. Can you guys share a little bit more about how you engage your coalition members in the process and how you might engage them now during these times?
Well, like I said earlier, what we did was kind of take some of the time from our normal coalition meetings to go over the application process, what's required, you know, because if you don't necessarily have like a person that does graphic design or something, or that's not interested in, then you kind of need to engage those people to see if you need to resource that out, if somebody on staff or in the coalition is able to do those things. If they're, you know, you can go to the coalition and say, hey, we've got to design this PowerPoint that's telling our story. And if somebody has been there, you know, there's 1 or 2 people that's been with the coalition since it began, maybe engaging them to have their input. We also had a couple quotes from some long-term members as well. So we engaged them in that way by saying, hey, we want to highlight, like we had a lady that's or a parent of one of our youth coalition members who would quit smoking for after a long time. So I reached out to her to say, hey, that's awesome that that's your story. Would you mind if we shared that? Or would you mind giving us a quote kind of about that, or how the kids and the coalition has impacted you? So even in the individual level of engaging them outside of the coalition meetings and stuff, but then also engaging them by letting them really be a part of the process. And critiquing what you've come up with. If you come up with something because nobody's volunteering, and then going back to them and saying, hey, here's what I've created, or here's what we've got so far. What do you think? You know, so you can get really creative in that process of how you can engage. And there's a lot of different avenues for people in the coalition to engage in.
You know what we did? We conducted a series of focus groups, and coalition members were either invited to participate in them or see the results afterward. And in these focus groups, we brought teens, school resource officers, some adults in the community. And coalition members, you know, they really value listening in on that or reading the summary afterward. And then we took the results of those focus group conversations and we sorted them into categories. So where do kids get their alcohol? And it's from here, here, and here. And then what, I know I'm jumping around, but then the coalition members, armed with those focus group conversations in their head, or they read about them, they voted on what they thought our key root causes were. So just having them so at the ground level familiar with what local conditions are through the focus groups, and then voting on the key root causes took them to a whole nother level. And I think they talk a different language these days. And that's how I might suggest to you that you might consider involving them that way.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. So this ends our panelist discussion section. Thank you guys for answering these questions and for participants for asking some questions that you were curious about. If you do have any more, please feel free to just let us know. So just to wrap things up, the application deadline is Monday, August 10th. You can go ahead and email all of the application documents to gotoutcomes@cadca.org and just put the subject heading Got Outcomes Phase 1 application. You will receive a confirmation email as soon as we've received it. So just keep an eye out for that. And just to give you a general idea of the timeline from today all the way through the National Leadership Forum. Included in that is the application deadlines, technical assistance, and then also leading up to the presentation at Forum. So if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to let us know. I'm gonna go ahead and put the Got Outcomes email in the chat box one more time. And then also please go ahead and go to the Got Outcomes website on CADCA for more information. All right, so I think that's about it. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your Tuesday.